Resilience. You know, it may be the single most important quality that really allows ordinary people to triumph, ordinary and extraordinary. I think you have to be extraordinary to take the moment of difficulty and turn it into something really magical and special in your life. Because no matter how stacked the odds are against you, you can turn it around. Would you describe yourself as resilient? My next guest definitely would.
Busy today, huh?
Executive chef Jeff Henderson.
Let's get some tomatoes, baby.
Is at the helm of Cafe Bellagio in Las Vegas.
Plate me up that sea bass, chef.
A bustling 24-hour operation.
How you guys doing today?
Watching Chef Jeff today, it's hard to imagine the troubled path that led him here.
I grew up in a neighborhood just like this one here. A lot of poverty, abandoned homes, people sleeping in cars, dealers hanging out on the corners.
Jeff says his father left the family when he was only 2, and his mother struggled, working 2 jobs.
Me and my sister pretty much took care of ourselves. It was tough at times. You know, there were times when, you know, we wondered what we were going to have for dinner.
Raised in South Central Los Angeles, Jeff says good role models were hard to come by.
We didn't have the doctors and the lawyers and the people who were going to college, but the guys that I looked up to had all the gadgets and trinkets of the fast life. And I eventually modeled my life after theirs.
Arrested for theft at 15 years old, it wasn't long before Jeff says he started selling marijuana and crack cocaine.
I was making up to $35,000 a week, and I'm sure at least $4, $5, $6 million went through my hands.
By the time he was 21, Jeff was one of the biggest drug dealers in town, becoming, he says, a neighborhood legend.
I thought I was on, I was on top of the world. You know, I was the man. We would roll into the casinos with hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we were treated like royalty. You know, we brought the cash. You know, we had the women. We got the big hotel suites, and we lived a lifestyle that was a dream. It felt good to be somebody.
But Jeff's high-rolling lifestyle came to an end when federal agents raided his home and arrested him. He was convicted and sentenced to 19 years in prison for drug trafficking and conspiracy.
When the judge handed down my sentence, it was like I couldn't even move. Every juror said guilty, guilty, guilty. I just couldn't believe that they would send me away for so long.
Jeff was no longer a high roller. He was now inmate number 16138-198.
The worst day of my life was after the reality of being locked up set in. But at the end of the day, you know, I should have been in jail, you know.
Ashamed of his past, Jeff began to come to terms with the toll his choices had taken on others. He says exposing his family to his drug life is one of his biggest regrets.
At times, my mother used to help me count money, and when I was locked up, she had to come visit me. You know, when you're poor and you never had nothing, and the opportunity comes to have money and do the things that you want to do, you know, you just look the other way.
For Jeff, prison became a catalyst for change.
I got information from watching like 60 Minutes and 2020 and reading newspapers, and, you know, my first book I ever read was in prison. I started to believe I was smart, and I wanted more. I wanted to learn more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As you can see, my journey to chefdom was really different from most chefs. However, my story was about redemption, and I didn't come to realize that until many years into my incarceration. And my success in my life today all came from a dream. And that dream goes back to 30 years ago when I was 12 years old, born and raised in Los Angeles. And I had a dream to one day put my mother and my sister in a house on a hill with a white picket fence, 2-car garage, swimming pool in the backyard, on a quiet street where there was no gunshots and violence, with big, big trees. Since I was young, food have always been important to me, always wondering where the next meal would come from. And my grandmother was the only person in my family who had a cookie jar. And it was a green ceramic cat. And she always kept it filled with sugar and lemon cookies. These were actually little Jewish cookies. My grandfather was a janitor up in the Wilshire district in LA, and he used to always bring home these little cookies. And we couldn't wait to go to grandma's house to get these cookies on the weekend. And when I was on a busing program growing up, and in my neighborhood, it's funny because there were no leadership. There wasn't the doctors, it wasn't the lawyers, it wasn't the people who stimulated our minds intellectually growing up. They were the hustlers on the street corners where they manufactured dreams. They taught us how to eat better, put money in our pocket, and get that house on the hill. And I was on the busing program, and we used to get on the school bus on 83rd and Normandy, right in South Central LA, and catch the bus to the valley. But going to the valley, we drove through suburban communities. And here you are, a young kid sitting on the school bus looking out the window and seeing these beautiful homes and wondering, how come they have and we don't? But I didn't realize that till later in life in prison, the difference between the have and the have-nots. So I embarked on a life of crime, breaking in houses, stealing, doing all these different things to get money to buy clothes, to buy food for my sister and I. And back in those days, going to Sizzler was a treat. Back then it used to be $2.99, sirloin steak and all the shrimp you can eat. And we used to go there from time to time when my mother had a little extra cash on hand. And food was just so important to me back then. So a lot of my stealing and taking came from being hungry. So as I was going through high school, I never got involved in the sports. I was always hustling, trying to figure out how to eat better and put money in my pocket. And I started selling drugs. Started out marijuana, and eventually to crack cocaine after I got out of high school in 1982. And it was a guy by the name of T-Row that you'll read about in my book. And he was my criminal mentor. T-Row told me I was somebody. He showed me love. He put his hands around me. And he fed me. He put clothes on me, put shoes on my feet. And eventually I started looking out for him and selling weed and learning all the traits of a hustler. And eventually T-Row went to prison, and I took over his drug operation. And I started selling, cooking, and manufacturing crack cocaine, which is something that I'm definitely not proud of. And I will talk to you about how the whole power of change came about down the line. So by the time I was 19 years old, I was a millionaire. I eventually got the house on the hill up in Dictionary Hills, San Diego, custom built, 3-car garage, palm trees on the street, moved my mother out of the ghetto, and we lived good for a while. But unfortunately, we lived good at the expense of other people who looked just like me, people from my community. In 1988, I got indicted by the federal government. And I was sentenced to 19.5 years. And when I first went to prison, I was angry at the world. I hated everybody and blamed everybody for my shortcomings in life and all my problems that I had. And it wasn't until later to where I accepted responsibility. So when I got sentenced to 19.5 years, I went through a moment of depression. And after I got to prison, I went through depression, I went through anger, I didn't want to talk to my family, I blamed my father, everybody but myself. And eventually, I got introduced to different prison organizations. And in prison, everything is segregated. The white inmates, the black inmates, the Latino inmates, the Asian inmates. And I went through this whole revolutionary way of changing my mind because people kept coming to me saying, you need to join us, you need to join them, and whatnot. So eventually, a gentleman by the name of MZ gave me a book called Black Men, Obsolete, Single, and Dangerous. And I've never read a book in my life except when I was in elementary school, James and the Giant Peach and Curious George. And when I read this book built my self-esteem up. And it talked about the contributions African Americans made to this country and things that were foreign to me I was learning about. And I started to believe in myself. And eventually I went to school in prison, got my GED, and eventually I met these young gentlemen. Actually, they weren't young, they were a little older than me. They were Wall Street business moguls. They were co-defendants of Michael Milliken, Ivan Bolsky, Wall Street business moguls. And I was in the federal prison system where you have a more sophisticated inmate. And yes, judges, lawyers, you wouldn't believe the chiropractors that are in federal prison or filthy insurance companies. you know. So here I'm sitting in prison, and these white gentlemen, in prison, everyone has their own TV room, the white TV room, the black, the Asian, the Latino. And the white guys in the white TV room are always watching CNN so they can see the stocks and Dow Jones going across, you know. And the other TV rooms were sports and more cultural shows. And I used to always peek in their window to see what these guys were watching. So one day, a tall gentleman named Alvin asked me to come in. And for the first time in my life, I watched 60 Minutes. They introduced me to 2020 Primetime Live, where I got really interested in these current events and what was going on in the world, something that I've never done in my life. And there was a special that came on about the effect of crack cocaine in African-American communities across the country. And they had a special on crack babies. And I started selling cocaine in 1983. And this was about 1989, you know, 1989 or 99, that I really started to see the effect of my lifestyle that it had on these young babies that were born that they call crack babies. And at that point, I believe was a pinnacle in me changing my life to where I said I could never, ever sell drugs. I could never, ever do anything to hurt anybody. And that was a changing point in my life as far as criminal activity. And then as time went on, I was hungry for knowledge. I wanted to read, I wanted to write. And I started ordering books from the outside and different self-help books that allowed me to take flight from prison and expose myself to situations and experiences around the world, because the world became fascinated to me. And I remember one book I read called Current Affairs by Henry Kissinger. And it taught me about how the government works and why we have interests in overseas. It became very, very interesting, and I started reading. And one day, I didn't go to my job. I was on a Cadillac crew where you sweep cigarette butts on a compound. And I was fired from my job, and I was put on pot and pan detail in the kitchen. So I lost my job because I'm up in the library all the time. But one thing I realized when I got in the prison kitchen, that the inmates who work in the kitchen got to eat better than other inmates. So you got the extra chicken, the desserts, and all these different things. So where other inmates saw punishment, I saw an opportunity. And there were several inmate cooks who took me up under the wing and taught me how to cook. I eventually ordered curriculum and different books and stuff from the CIA and LA Trade Tech, and I began to teach myself in prison. For the first time in my life, I'm being praised for something that was positive and that was good. So I was able to experiment in prison, enhancing the flavors of prison food. So how I used to do this is I used to order top ramen noodles and take the little seasoning packages out. You have the beef, the chicken, and the pork flavor. And I would enhance the flavor of the vegetables and add different spices to the chicken and the meatloaf and different things for the kitchen crew. So people were always saying, man, is Jeff in the kitchen today? Is Jeff in the kitchen today? So I would take these different spices back to the unit. Every Christmas, we were allowed to order the Petridge Farms packages to where we get the Gouda cheeses and the cream cheeses every holiday. So I would make these nachos, I call penitentiary nachos. And, yeah, so the different inmates would gather ingredients around the prison yard and make a contribution to the spread, whether it was onions, whether it was jalapenos, whether it was whatever the case may be. So anyway, I'm in the kitchen, I'm growing, I'm developing, and the time comes for me to get out of prison. I got released in 1996, and prior to me getting released from prison, I read an article in the USA Today about the top African-American chefs, Patrick Clark, Marcus Samuelson, Robert Gatsby. I began to write them letters asking them for a job. So I got out of prison, made my way to Gatsby's in Beverly Hills. It took a month and a half for him to give me a job. He finally convinced me. And I came to this guy and said, listen, you know, I'm an ex-offender. I made some wrong choices. But from those wrong choices, I'm a better person today. And he eventually gave me a job as a dishwasher. And I told him, I said, instead of giving me a 90-day probation, give me a 30-day probation. Let me prove to you that I'm worthy and I'm capable of doing this job. So he brought me on. I had to wash dishes, clean the bathrooms, everything. But I was the first one in, last out. I would sit around and wait till the cooks call in sick and say, chef, I can work that station. And eventually I moved to pastry cook, line cook. But there were several things that Robert also taught me. He taught me about the corporate food world. And people were kind of intimidated by me when I first came out of prison. I was pretty buff from lifting weights. I didn't know how to smile. I had a swagger in my walk. And, you know, Robert was saying, Jeff, you know, before you leave me, there's things that you have to change about yourself. So what I had to do when I went into Marriott, the Hotel Bel Airs, Ritz-Carlton, L'Hermitages, Caesar's Palace, and the Bellagio's of the world, I had to straighten up the way I walk. I took makeup and covered my earring hole up, clean-shaved my face, and was able to smile and shake hands with people and not make them feel intimidated or threatened. I made the felony jacket pretty much become transparent. and it worked for me. And I embarked on a culinary journey all around LA. And my goal was to go to the CIA, but I was on federal parole, so I wasn't able to leave LA. And I worked my way up from Marriott to Hotel Bel Air, Ritz-Carlton, and eventually set my sights on Las Vegas in the year 2000. My parole officer let me off early because of good behavior, and I said, I want to work for the Bellagio, the Bentley of them all. I mean, that was a premier property in Las Vegas. So here I make my way to Vegas. Everybody on the strips turned me down, except Caesar's Palace. Full circle again. 17 years ago, I used to be a high roller at Caesar's Palace. One of the biggest drug dealers used to come there and spend money, presidential suites and everything. So now I'm back there 17 years later as an employee. So now I'm working at Caesar's Palace. Within my 90 days on the job, I got promoted to the first African-American chef de cuisine in 35-year history of Caesar's Palace. After that, thank you. After that, I left Caesars 3 years later, went to the Hard Rock Hotel, worked for Harry Morton, Peter Morton's grandson, executive chef AJ Steakhouse. Eventually, they changed regimes at the Bellagio Hotel. And I came to the Bellagio Hotel 3 years ago, and Wolfgang von Wieser gave me an opportunity. And Terry Lanny, who's the chairman of MGM Mirage, did a bold move in 2000. He recognized and understood the value of diversity. He knew it was the right thing to do, and it was good for business as well. And that opportunity allowed me to come into the Bellagio, and I became the executive chef of Cafe Bellagio within 3 months, the first African-American at the Bellagio Hotel. It was a great feat for me, and I've been totally blessed. And throughout my travels and my journey of becoming a chef, my other passion I have when I'm not in the kitchen is giving back to young people across the country. I have a company called Urban Educational Consulting, and I talk to young people about choices. I go into prisons, I work with CCAP, ProStar, the NRA, trying to introduce food to a broad audience of young people. And I've been very blessed for doing that. I have a moral obligation to give back for the rest of my life trying to fix my wrong. And from everything that's been happening over the years, everything just like totally came full circle. And I feel blessed and thankful to all the organizations and all the people who believed in me and have given me a second chance. Recently in my book, which I actually started writing 17 years ago when I was in prison, and it's a book about crime, passion, and punishment. It's a journey of redemption and change. And there was no secret, there was no aha moment that changed my life. And it was a collective of situations, circumstances that allowed me to be able to change. And that's my message today to young people and to corporations as well. I actually was on, you guys see I was on Oprah Winfrey, and 2 hours after Oprah aired, I got a call on my cell phone, and I said, hello, this is Chef Jeff. And he said, yeah, this is Will and Todd Black from Escape Artists. I said, come on, who's playing on the phone? He said, this is Will Smith. I want to buy the life rights to your story. I said, well, okay, yeah, I'll sell it to you, you know? So, so he came and he called me. I got in the car with his driver. We went to a set, I Am Legend. He purchased the life rights for 7 figures of Cooked, which he's going to star in me in the movie. Recently just got a Food Network 8-episode reality show. It's going to be the first reality show on the Food Network called the Chef Jeff Project, where I take young inner city kids from diverse backgrounds into the kitchen and try to transform their lives through food. And that's the Chef Jeff story. And you know, my success is bigger than me. You know, people say, Jeff, you didn't smile when you were on Oprah. Well, I don't smile much when I talk about my past because it was a dark moment in my life. But when I'm talking about food, and I love cooking, I specialize in California French. And the food that I do that I'm going to do in my own restaurant is called Posh Urban Cuisine, which is a redefined Southern cuisine that's a little light healthier and kind of like a twist of California French and Mediterranean. So I want to share with you my message that I do with young people when I'm not in the kitchen. So please take a look. Go up high, hit them off. There you go, all the way down, baby, all the way down. Boom, 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 boom. And always when you're cooking and you're working the grill, never forget about here. What's going on over here? What's going on in here? We all want the finer things in life. Everybody here want a swimming pool in their yard, don't you? Why not? Why shouldn't you have a house with a white picket fence, 2 or 3 car garage? Why not? Why should you have a mother and father in your house? Why not? Why should you take a vacation overseas and enjoy Europe, Italy, Spain, China, Africa? Why not? Everybody else do it. That's the American dream. That's the real American dream. The pie in the sky. I'm trying to show you guys how to wait not to get the crumbs,
but get the feeling and get spices of the American dream. I'm passionate, I'm focused, and I'm driven. And I want to see the same thing for all you guys. When I look at you, when I talk to you, I give you tough love. I'm not trying to come down. When I say wake up, when I say comb your hair, when I say try to lose weight, when I say get your teeth fixed, when I say take that gold out your mouth, when I say straighten up the way you walk, pull your pants up, I'm doing it because I love you, because Jerry loves you. I'm on vacation right now. I could be at home right now with my family. But it's very important for me to come here. Everybody here knows right and wrong. Everybody knows the consequences of making wrong choices, don't you? Everybody does. So again, I'm treating you like an adult. You guys are at war for your life. There's a battlefield out there. You need to put your boots on. You need to tie your bootstraps up. You need to get ready for war. You need to go out there, get that information, get that knowledge, get focused, get driven, get off the street, stop that gossiping, get rid of that madness, and go out there and get your paper.
Thank you.